In an explosive courtroom scene that's already making waves across social media, Boosie lost his composure completely after Charleston White, his longtime nemesis, managed to secure a devastating addition to his prison sentence. 5 extra years, following a chaotic fight between the two that erupted right in the middle of his court hearing, shattering any chance of a smooth verdict and leaving fans stunned at the chain of events that unfolded in mere minutes. What began as an ordinary sentencing day for Boosie quickly turned into a spectacle of raw emotions, verbal jabs, and outright chaos that would ultimately change the course of his future behind bars. From the moment Boosie entered the courtroom, the energy in the air was heavy, almost electric. The case had already been drawing public attention due to Boosie's history and the simmering feud with Charleston White, but no one expected the powder keg to go off the way it did. Charleston White, seated just a few rows back, had an expression that could only be described as smug satisfaction. He wasn't just there as a witness. He was a thorn in Boosie's side, a man who had been publicly exchanging insults with him for months online, through interviews and in street-level gossip that seemed to find its way into every corner of the hip-hop community. To many watching, his very presence in that courtroom felt like an instigation, a silent dare. Boosie tried to ignore it first, focusing on his legal team and the whispers from supporters in the gallery. But Charleston's presence was like a shadow in the room, taunting without words. The judge began the proceedings, reading to the charges, previous convictions, and recommended sentencing. For a moment, it seemed like things might proceed smoothly, albeit grimly. Then Charleston's name was called to stand. The energy shifted instantly. Boosie's eyes narrowed. The calm he'd been trying to maintain started to crack. Charleston approached with deliberate slowness, pausing to glance at Boosie before taking his oath. What came next felt like a masterclass in provocation. Charleston didn't just testify about the facts. He laced every word with thinly veiled insults, sideways comments, and little jabs designed to dig under Boosie's skin. He spoke about Boosie's past, his alleged actions, and his behavior both inside and outside prison, painting a picture of a man who, in Charleston's words, ain't learned nothing from being locked up. Boosie's breathing grew heavier. His lawyers exchanged nervous glances, silently urging him to stay calm. But then Charleston crossed a line, bringing up family, personal tragedies, and private moments that had no place in the courtroom. The defense objected, but the damage was done. Boosie shot up from the seat, words flying out in a storm of anger. The judge's gavel slammed down, but Boosie wasn't hearing it. He charged toward Charleston, security reacting too slowly to prevent the first shove. Gasps filled the air. Reporters scrambled to capture the scene, and in seconds, the courtroom dissolved into chaos. Charleston stumbled back but kept smirking, knowing full well that this was exactly the reaction he'd wanted. The fight wasn't long. Security and deputies swarmed in, pulling the two apart, but the disruption was enough to derail the entire hearing. The judge was livid, calling both men's behavior a disgrace to the court. But while Charleston walked away with nothing more than a warning and a satisfied grin, Boosie's outburst would come back to haunt him in the worst possible way. During the recess, prosecutors seized on the incident as proof that Boosie was unreformed, unrepentant, and a danger to the order of the court. They argued that this behavior demonstrated not only a lack of respect for the justice system, but also a clear pattern of aggression. When the judge returned, the mood in the courtroom was icy. What happened next hit like a sledgehammer. The judge announced that, based on Boosie's previous record, the crimes for which he was already being sentenced, and now the violent disruption of court proceedings, he was adding an additional 5 years to Boosie's sentence. The words hung in the air like a death knell. Boosie's jaw dropped, his body almost slumping under the weight of it. 5 years. Not probation, not fines, years. You could see the calculation in his eyes, the slow, devastating realization of just how much longer he would now be sitting behind bars. And then came the final blow. Charleston White, seated again in the gallery, was laughing, not a quiet laugh, but visible, shoulder-shaking laugh that made it clear he felt like he'd won. The image of Boosie, staring daggers at Charleston as deputies escorted him out of the courtroom, is already circulating online. Social media erupted instantly. Twitter flooded with clips of the fight, Instagram posts dissecting every second of the exchange, and YouTube channels breaking down how a feud that had been boiling for months had just cost Boosie half a decade of his life. Fans are split. Some see Charleston as a master manipulator who knew exactly how to bait Boosie into self-destruction, while others argue Boosie brought on himself by letting his emotions take over in such a high-stakes setting. Behind bars, sources say Boosie is furious, not just at Charleston, but at himself. He knows that in one explosive moment, he handed the system exactly the excuse it needed to make an example of him. His team is reportedly considering an appeal, but legal experts agree the chances of overturning the added years are slim, given the clear disruption to court order. For Charleston, the incident is likely to be paraded online as yet another victory in his long list of public spats. He's already hinted in live streams that he did what needed to be done and that Boosie played himself. The ripple effect of this incident is huge. Boosie's music career, which was already strained by his incarceration, now faces an even longer hiatus. Planned collaborations, album drops, and tours are either being shelved or canceled outright. Industry insiders say this could mark a permanent turning point, with some labels unwilling to keep waiting for his release. Meanwhile, Charleston's notoriety has skyrocketed, his name trending alongside Boosie's in headlines, interviews, and debates about loyalty, provocation, and control in the face of hostility. What makes this moment sting for Boosie is the knowledge that, on paper, the extra 5 years aren't just a punishment for the crimes he committed, they're a punishment for losing control. In a system where perception can weigh just as heavily as evidence, that moment of physical retaliation became the perfect justification for a harsher sentence. And Charleston White, whether you see him as a villain or a strategist, orchestrated it in plain sight. As it stands, Boosie will now be serving a sentence that stretches well into the future, with a stain on his record that will follow him long after he's free. The fight with Charleston White will go down as one of the most infamous courtroom clashes in recent memory, a moment where pride, anger, and old grudges collided in the worst possible place. And for the fans watching from the outside, it's a grim reminder that in the world of high-profile beefs, sometimes the biggest blows aren't traded in the streets or in diss tracks. They're traded in courtrooms, where the consequences echo for years.
I need the
New footage just blew up. Fulio's crew and Youngin Ace going at it right inside the courtroom.